Okay. Okay. Good.
Good, Larry. Great. Well, welcome everyone. I will officially call the meeting to order. And our first agenda item is actually kind of an exciting item for us here tonight. As many of you know, and there's a great piece of the Enterprise, one of our long-term police officers and a lifelong Irvington resident, Dave Walsh, has been battling some health issues currently. And we thought this was a great opportunity to go ahead and with his promotion to detective. I've known Dave literally since high school. We're also adult friends, which is fantastic. And I think he's blossomed into exactly the kind of police officer that we value so much here in Irvington, someone who's patient and kind, but also, very effective in his job. So we're super lucky to have Dave, and it's a great honor to be able to promote him to detective today. This time I'd like to actually call on Chief Pignatelli to say a few words as well. Hey, Dave.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Dave. Thank you, Mayor, and I just want to thank you and the rest of the board for putting this together for tonight. It's my honor and pleasure tonight to be here for the purposes of promoting Officer David Walsh to detective. Like you mentioned, Dave's been a valuable asset to the Irvington Police Department for the past 20 years and to the Irvington community as a whole for his entire life. He's regarded very highly amongst his peers and the community members for the efforts he puts forth each day, whether he's on or off duty. He's been an advocate for those that are in need and has always made himself available to not only the police department, but to the community as a whole. He constantly puts other people's needs before his own, and he's always there to help anybody that needs help. So for these reasons, and there's many more I could go on enlisting, it's once again my pleasure to be able to be here to promote you, Dave, to detective. So thank you, Dave, for all that you do for everybody.
Thank you for your words. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, I will mention one thing that Zoom doesn't exactly feel like the proper celebration of Dave's promotion. So we are going to be holding an in-person after the healing mass on Thursday. So this is kind of the formal promotion, but we're going to have kind of the more feel-good one as well in person, because it's always so much better to be together. But without further ado, I would like to read the resolution now. Which is resolved to appoint Dave Walsh to the position of detective at an annual salary of $133,371, effective today, November 1st, 2021. I will make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Congratulations, detective. Super proud of you. The only thing I can't believe it's been 20 years. That seemed to have flown by for me. But it's been a great 20 years to the village. Your service to the village has been tremendous for 20 years. And we've really appreciated all you continue to do for Irvington.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the mayor, Chief Pignatelli, all the trustees, my wife, Karina, my parents. Like they said, I'm going through a difficult time, but the support from the village of Irvington and widespread is truly amazing. Everybody who's on this panel, I know you for a long time, and I thank you for your kindness, for just walking, and like the people say about me, I genuinely enjoy talking to people, and just to see a smile come from someone's face, or they bring a smile to my face, when you're going through a tough time, it's a great thing. And Irvington is a special community, as we all know. You want to be involved, there's plenty of opportunity to help other people. And anyway, I thank you for working here. I've been working here, and sometimes I say, talking to somebody online or helping someone on the street, it helps me as an Irvington resident. I get pleasure in as a resident, as a police officer. And it's always been put forward that the Irvington spirit that a lot of us show is so important. We're a community service oriented as well as, other arresting people and stuff like that. So I thank everybody here for their kindness, and thank you to the village of Irvington for letting me serve you for 20 years.
Dave, congratulations on your promotion, and clearly our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Dave.
Thank you.
I look forward to pinning you.
Beautifully said, Dave.
And my wife Karina says thank you too.
Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations to you as well.
Okay. All right.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you Thursday, Dave.
All right. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Okay,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Good night.
So we have a few announcements. One of them is actually also about Dave's Mass, but first we have a more boring one, checks over $25,000. We had two of them. One was for Tom Bucci Excavating from Tropical Storm Ida flooding damage repairs, and that was $73,578.50. We also had Illuminated Integration LLC, which was the upgrade to the theater sound equipment. It came out of the capital fund, and that was $37,938.35. Last week was actually school board recognition week as well. I think Janice filled in for me because I had a prior commitment, but everyone can read the proclamation here. But we do like to take, that one night each year to thank our colleagues at the Irvington Board of Education for all the long hours and tough decisions they have to make. So we just like to recognize the school board from the village. So I don't know if Janice, you had any thoughts from the meeting. You're a former school board member yourself.
Yes, I was very honored to be able to do it. And I've shared this with many of you. It's a harder job being a member of the school board than being a member of the village board in many ways. And you're dealing with people's kids every day, every week, every year, and you have to sell the budget every single year. It's tough. So I thank every single one of them for the time and service that they have been and are putting in. And I was pleased to be able to read the proclamation.
Next up, I wanted to thank everyone involved in making Halloween come back in such a special way yesterday. It's still super fresh in my mind. Obviously, it was 24 hours ago. We were in the middle of we were waiting for the B-52s to take the stage on North Dutcher. But thanks to all the bands, we had a record number of bands, a record number of attendees, and Doug McClure and his whole team that organized that organically. A lot of people think the village, pays bands or organizes it. It's actually all done organically. They do happily coordinate with us so we can, ensure that we have enough manpower and things like that. But it's something that's just grown every year. Even now, post-COVID, it seems to not even put a dent in the enthusiasm. And I know everyone had a great time. I'd like to thank the Recreation Department, who also had the very well-attended parade. It's always such a cool event. And then at the end of the parade, the Irvington Fire Company is giving out candy to kick off kind of the trick-or-treating. And then, of course, IPD was everywhere on Main Street last night, keeping everyone safe. We even had a lost child briefly. Well, I don't even think he knew he was lost, but he was quickly found. And it's just helpful when you have literally a police officer on just about every corner. And it's just wonderful how it's kind of developed a tradition of everyone coming to Main Street. When I was young and was trick-or-treating in Irvington, we'd be in East Irvington, and it just seemed to be like a battle zone, where the Main Street area just seems a lot more controlled and a lot more, kind of, I guess, like Peanuts Halloween without, the Great Pumpkin. But it was a great night again. So thanks everyone involved.
Brian, I just experienced it, the downtown. Obviously, I live very much in the downtown also. And I think having something in front of Village Hall with the Dog Ears Band was a new and wonderful addition. That was great. And I will reiterate what you said about the police officers. They seem to be having a great time. And they were very, very careful about every single block, because it's the time, I think, when people are just oblivious, and without being like the mean guy, you have to kind of get the strollers out of the middle of Main Street. So it was wonderful. It was a great Irvington night. I didn't see anything. I wouldn't see anything that I could say, oh gosh, too bad that happened. So anyway, thank you, Irvington.
It was great.
People put a lot of time out on the displays. I mean, I was on North Dutcher, and my favorite were the flying sharks. But it's not everywhere you see such creativity. And so thank you to all the residents.
Absolutely. And shifting gears to tomorrow, as opposed to yesterday. Tomorrow, of course, is Election Day. the one thing I'd like to mention is that if you voted at Dow's Lane Village Hall or the library, your polling place is the same as it was pre-COVID. But if you previously voted at Immaculate Conception Church, which I think there's a fair number of districts that vote there, your polling location is now at the Irvington High School. You can also, if you're not sure where you vote, you can go to the Westchester Board of Elections website, put in your address, and they will tell you exactly where to go. But otherwise, get out and vote tomorrow. I think polls open, Brenda, 6 a.m.
6 to 9 p.m.
6 to 9. So you have a nice wide window if you haven't voted early, which early voting obviously ended yesterday. So, yeah, everyone get out and vote tomorrow. And then lastly, I was just going to mention that this Thursday at 4 p.m. at Immaculate Conception Church, there is a healing mass scheduled for Detective Dave Walsh. So we're going to be there to send him prayers and good vibes. Everyone's obviously encouraged to attend. Doesn't matter if you're Catholic or have no religion at all. It doesn't matter. Everyone's welcome to send their prayers and good thoughts to Dave. And then, as I mentioned, we hope to have a in-person ceremony to do his promotion the right way, which isn't Zoom. So that's all I had. I don't know if anybody else had any other announcements. Otherwise, we'll move on to correspondence. We had 3 pieces of correspondence. One was from Veronica Gedrich on behalf of the Historical Society in support of the Odell Tavern being designated a local landmark. Next, we had the Rancics letter on Villa Lawaro, which will be part of the public hearing. And then we had a letter from Zoe Hamilton von Bar about the deer population in Irvington. While I don't typically comment on the letters, I'll just say quickly, I spoke to Joe Archino from the rec department, who is working, Zoe's actually on the Woods Committee, and they're creating a subcommittee to look at the issue, see if, what other people found, what success others have had, and then report back to this board. So that's gonna start soon. I think they're actually forming their committee already, and they'll be meeting shortly. So I told them, I spoke on behalf of the board. I said we'd be all ears to hear what's worked for other people. We had discussed this, I guess, Connie, about 11 years ago or so, 10, 11 years ago. And there aren't really a lot of great options. That's kind of what we found out. Hastings obviously tried some things, but it's a very complicated issue for sure. Now we'll open it up for public comment. If anybody has any public comments. If not, I will move on to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions on the consent agenda? If not, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up is continuation of a public hearing to consider a local law opting out of licensing and establishing retail cannabis dispensaries and on-site consumption establishments in the village of Irvington. I don't think we received any more correspondence on this, Larry. We've discussed this multiple times. We discussed it at length at the last public hearing. We've kind of left it open in case anybody had any other strong feelings. But as I kind of characterized it last time, I think it's probably been more than 90%. Please opt out. And it seems like a pretty straightforward answer. Although I will mention that several of our neighbors are choosing not to opt out. So they'll be opting in by default. But we'll see what happens if they all end up doing it or not. But Dobbs Ferry and Hastings apparently and Sleepy Hollow are the kind of our closest neighbors that are considering not opting out. Ardsley and Elmsford have already opted out. So just to kind of give a little bit of a where we are compared to our neighbors. But I don't know if anyone on the board has any comments. Otherwise, I'll open it up to the public. I mean, we've discussed this kind of ad nauseum and our reasoning why we think we should opt out. Most of it's operational and the fact that you can't opt out again in the future. So you kind of lose that kind of local control if we don't opt out now. Anyone from the public would like to comment on this? If not, I will make a motion to close the public hearing if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Whereas enactment of this amendment is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, And whereas the board has determined that the amendment will have no adverse environmental impacts and therefore issues a negative declaration under SECRA, and resolved to adopt a local law opting out of the licensing and establishing retail cannabis dispensaries and on-site consumption establishments in the village of Irvington. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have to sign anything for that, Larry, or we're? No.
I don't think so. We just have publication requirements,
Yeah.
which.
It's special publication requirements announcing that, because it is subject to permissive referendum, so.
Correct. Very good. Next up is continuation of a public hearing requesting a special permit for adaptive reuse of an historic building, 67 North Broadway, Villa Lawara. I guess, I don't know, Mariana, if you want to give a quick summary, but we did receive a revised request for a special permit.
Well, I mean, it actually was pretty similar to the last one, except that the numbers were increased quite a bit for the regular programming. The board had talked about a limit of 62 people, and that was based on Villa Lawara's, estimating that there'd be 25 to 50 people of programs. So you gave them the benefit of the doubt, the bigger number, and then assume there might be staff and stuff. So 62, but so you came up with the number 62. But this proposal would allow 100 attendees on site, for the regular educational programs. That doesn't mean every day, but when they do have, they'd have a max of 100, and then the staff beyond that 12. I mean, Jennifer can tell if there's any other changes. I mean, that was the one that was the one that that jumped out.
Hi, everyone. Jennifer Gray from Keen & Bean. If it's okay, I'll go through. I'll pick up where Marianne kind of left off, and then there's also a couple responses to public comments I'd like to address quickly before you have any questions or open it up to the public. So as Marianne mentioned, yes, there was a revised statement of use provided. It did increase the number of attendees from 50 to 100. It also provided, as the board asked, a end time for any of the programming, which was slated at 10 p.m. If I could, I'd like to just address a couple of the public comments that came up during the last public hearing session, and then also in written correspondence since then. And then I can get into the reasoning why the number of attendees changed in the statement of use. So at the last public meeting, a comment was raised about the location of the existing carriage house in relation to the adjacent property to the south at 65 North Broadway. The carriage house does extend about 2 feet into that property to the south. It's an existing condition that's existed since the carriage house was built, frankly. It is shown on a subdivision plat that was approved by the planning board back in 1998. And it's also shown on prior surveys, and it was acknowledged in a deed as early as 1947, which conveyed property including 65 North Broadway. In response to this, we understand that, even though its physical location is the same as it has been, there's no changes being proposed there, and it's been a static condition for decades upon decades. But we do recognize that the use of the carriage house is changing from residential to an adaptive reuse special permit. So in light of that, what we're proposing is to plant some evergreen screening on the south side. I think in my letter I said the north side of the carriage house. That was a mistake. On the south side of the carriage house, in a location that is acceptable, mutually agreeable to that property owner at 65 North Broadway. And we can work with that property owner to find mutually acceptable location and plant species. We suggested arborvitae, but we understand arborvitae might be susceptible to deer grazing. So we can figure out an appropriate species that would provide screening year round, winter and during the summer months. So that's what we are offering in that regard and in response to that comment. Turning now to some more recent comments, we did receive the letter that was submitted late last week from the Rancics, and it raised, compliance with the special permit standards. Obviously, this is a critical component to the application, right? We need to meet the special permit standards set forth in your code in order to receive the special permit. We outlined those special permit standards in our August submission. Those standards and our compliance with the standards has not changed. And we submitted justification for that position. One of the standards is compliance with the comprehensive plan. The application is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which seeks to preserve historic and architecturally significant properties by allowing for their reuse. We disagree with the opinion stated in the letter that would read the comprehensive plan as limiting reuse to only a museum. If that were the case, it would essentially nullify the provisions of the adaptive reuse special permit local law that was adopted by the board in 2018, which allows these historic sites to be utilized for historical, educational, and cultural facilities, things including a museum, but for things other than a museum as well. We've also, regarding the special permit standards, we've submitted a report prepared by architect Steve Tilley that discusses the building's compliance with the state code requirements. To the extent that report still needs to be reviewed by the building or fire inspector, that we're endeavoring to have the building inspector and the fire inspector review that report and come to the site to give opinions, but that can certainly be made a condition of approval. So the special use permit would not be effective unless and until the building inspector and fire inspector sign off on that report. So that takes care of that. As far as the location, size, and character of the use, then it will be in harmony with the existing and future development of the district. No site improvements are proposed as part of this special permit. And we believe that with the proposed limitations on the activities that are proposed to take place on the site, any possible detrimental impacts are going to be minimized or avoided. And those include things like traffic and parking and noise. I think we've discussed those at prior meetings, and we've come up with a pretty robust set of limitations on those items. Let's see. Some of those items include, off-site parking requirements and limitations on hours of operation, a number of people who can visit the site at any given time. And of course, compliance with the noise ordinance will be required as it is now. With respect to pedestrian and vehicular traffic, we believe that the use will not have a detrimental impact on pedestrian or vehicular traffic in the area for the reasons that we just stated. We've come up with a parking program that will limit the number of cars that are allowed to access the site at any given time. With respect to each of the educational programs and other events, there'll be a pre-registration process. So everyone will know exactly where they're supposed to park. Only a limited number of folks will be allowed to park on site. Everyone else will have to park at the off-site locations, which information would be provided to people upon registration for each of the programs. With respect to the special permit standard that talks about buildings and landscaping on the site, not hindering or discouraging the appropriate development on adjacent properties or impairing the value of those properties, we're not proposing any changes to the building other than the restoration efforts that are ongoing on the site. And as we mentioned at the top of the meeting, we're offering to enhance the landscape screening of the carriage house. And then the last standard is that adequate off-street parking will be required. Again, we've developed the parking program. I think an important part to remember there is that the owner is in control of the programming and can adjust the schedule to accommodate available parking. So for example, we've mentioned in prior meetings that that each of the churches whom we've received commitments from for off-site parking locations, each of those commitments is subject to their own use. So if, for example, they have a wedding scheduled at a church on a Saturday when we may need to use the off-site parking for a program, the owner has the flexibility to adjust the schedule of that program so that it can accommodate and be scheduled at a time when there is adequate space available at the off-site parking locations. So there is flexibility built in there, and it's understood that with each program and event that occurs, the owner is responsible for complying with those special permit limitations. And it's, the hammer there is a serious one, and it's written in your code that in the event there is non-compliance with the limitations and the conditions in a special permit, the risk there is that the special permit may be revoked. So that's a very serious serious enforcement mechanism that the village holds, and one which the applicant and the owner take very seriously. One more point that I want to make before we go into the revised statement of use, and that is SECRA has been raised in public comments at a couple of the meetings, and then most recently in the letter that was received by the village late last week. The special permit application is a type 2 action under SECRA, so it does not require SECRA review. Recent amendments to SECRA, which became effective in 2019, included a couple of new types of type 2 categories, including a category for reuse of existing buildings for uses that are permitted by zoning, including a special permit use. This new type 2 category was included out of recognition that since SECRA was originally adopted many years ago, and since its like most recent overhaul prior to this last set of revisions, zoning codes have come a long way since that time, that they're a lot more robust, a lot more detailed, and have really been developed over the last 20 or 30 years. So now they now include robust provisions, including the special permit standards that your code includes, dealing with things like traffic and noise and the appropriate and orderly development of the district. So DEC looked at that and said, SECRA for these permitted uses is really becoming redundant in that regard. So here we have no physical disturbances to the site. There are no wetlands on or adjacent to the property, no impact to the Hudson River critical environmental area, and the traffic and parking and noise issues are already covered in your local code. So regardless, it's a type 2 action under SECRA, and no review under those regulations is required by the Board of Trustees. So I just wanted to make that clear because it has come up in a couple of meetings now. All right, so getting to the revisions that were made to the statement of use. We do appreciate the board's time in that work session. It was about a month ago now, where we sat or met virtually in an informal setting to discuss the parameters of the special permit topic by topic. And I think we covered a lot of ground there. We incorporated most, if not all, of those provisions into the statement of use that we submitted, with those 2 exceptions that we just mentioned at the top of the meeting. The one exception was the fact that the number of attendees that we discussed at the work session as being 50. The owner went back, took a look at the programming for the Institute. And just as a reminder, the main proposed use of the building is for the educational programming of the Madam C.J. Walker Institute for Women of Color Entrepreneurs. Their programming is tailored to the specific needs and perspectives of typically underserved women, and includes training on things like financial literacy and business planning, marketing, e-commerce, and other business related topics. There are the 3 ancillary proposed uses, with the main use, those being the office space for the Institute, tours, and events that fall outside of the scope of that programming, that educational programming. So with the increase from 50 to 100 attendees, the owner felt that the 50 attendees was going to be too restrictive for their programming. For example, while many of the programs will be limited to 10 or 20 attendees just based on the limited interest in the narrow topics for a particular industry sector. For example, if they have programming related specifically to retail businesses or consulting services, management services, those are going to attract a smaller segment of the Institute's registrants. But programs that speak to broader topics like business planning and marketing on a general level are going to yield a greater interest over multiple industries. And when we take those broader programs into consideration, the owner felt that limiting the programs to 50 was going to really sort of hamstring the flexibility that the Institute needs to plan for those programs. That includes the periodic capstones of the programs, like the pitch competitions that we spoke about earlier, that will require more than 50 attendees. You've got the 50 registrants for the program, but then when you also factor in the judges and the judges, the representatives from the judges' companies that come with them as well, it necessarily will be more than the 50. So to that end, with all of that in mind, we're coming to you tonight with the request to increase the threshold from 50 to 100, keeping in mind that all of the other limitations and restrictions would still remain in place. The parking program, noise controls, hours of operation, all of those items would still remain in place. Now, with respect to events outside of the scope of the Institute's educational programming, anything over that, the 100 attendees, call it 112 with the staffing, we would have to come back to you to seek approval for that. That part of the proposal has not changed. So anything over 112 people on site, including attendees, judges, staff, professors, program administrators, caterers, all the staff that would be necessary, anything over 112, we would have to come back to the Board of Trustees to demonstrate to you that all of the appropriate protocols are in place, including the ones in your special permit limitations and the conditions on the special permit. So we would have to demonstrate that all of those conditions have been met, and any additional protocols that may be necessary due to the increase in people being on site at any given time, whether it be off-duty police officers, directing traffic, extra off-street parking availability, whatever it is, we would have to demonstrate to your satisfaction that those impacts are taken care of and are met, so that there will be minimal to no disruptions to the neighborhood for those larger events. So with that, I think that kind of sums up that, the statement of use hasn't changed in its scope, in the sense that it still involves the educational programming as the bread and butter of what's being proposed here. That is the primary reason why we're before you, to create a space for the Institute to hold its seminars and programming for the education of its registrants. Ancillary to that, we have minor office space. Tours were included more as a response to public comment and comments from the board to allow others to come in. We anticipate we're going to get requests from like the Historical Society, local schools, et cetera, for tours. So we don't want to have to say no. It's not part of our special permit, so we can't host a tour. So that's part of an ancillary use. And then again, the events that fall outside of our regular programming. Before I conclude, and I'm sorry if this has been a little bit long, I do want to mention, because this came up during one of the prior meetings as well regarding tours. There was a comment, and I forget if it was from the public or I think it was from a member of the public, about a tour bus that had stopped in front of the site. I inquired about that after the meeting. That was not a tour bus that was in any way related to the owner. We're not sure who what organization the tour bus was from, but we are aware that there are tours in the area of historic sites, and with this particular site sort of being of recent notoriety, there was a Netflix program about this site and about the history of Madam C.J. Walker. And we believe that perhaps the site is increasing in its sort of celebrity status. So it may be that outside organizations are including this as sort of a stop on its journey. So that may be it.
I do have one update on the recent tour bus. It turned out it was related to Abbott House, bringing children up to their facility, and the bus can't actually the bus was too large to make the turn up Strawberry Lane. So they had to stop on Broadway. And I think the children actually walked up the hill. So it turns out it had nothing to do with yourselves or Villa Lawaro. So that was one mystery solved.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Mayor Smith.
Yep.
So with that, I'll open up to any questions that the board may have. And of course, we're interested in hearing any comments the public has as well.
Who would like to start? Janice is unmuted, so we start with you, Janice. Or?
So Brian, you're looking for one of us to
if someone wants to kick off
before we have any comments from the public.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we could share our. Obviously it's a new submission. It's a fairly decent change, so we can ask our questions and our comments first.
Right. I guess I would throw one question over to Steve Tilley to see if there are any additional information he's thought about as people have looked at the original plan of the valet parking and the regular parking. And I think on occasion there's been concern that maybe they weren't realistic or, I think a lot of time went into that, but Steve, if there's anything else you could offer related to your parking plan or revisit it a little bit, I would be anxious to hear that.
Yeah, Connie, thanks. We want to meet with the fire chief, the fire marshal, to talk about firefighting strategy, because you can't look at the building. There are portions of the building that are inaccessible from grade, so that, for example, the back terrace, the side, we're not sure that the porte cochere area actually is going to be critical to that. So that's why I went ahead and showed the tandem parking there in larger numbers than just, the space under the porte cochere. So, and you get surprising results when you talk to, very practical people who have to get equipment in there, unfurl hoses, get a water truck related, and actually fight the fire. And so I think what I have to do is, I have written, and I'll be calling and trying to book these very scarce people who are busy and looking at a lot of different projects. But I think it's important that we have that site visit and talk about real firefighting, and then that will inform our parking plan, whether we have 12 around that, around that circle or none. And they really, there's a hickory tree there, there's other obstacles. So I think that the equipment will, my assumption, and, I'm not in charge, is that the equipment needs to be on the large paved area where they can maneuver, and then hoses and ladders and so on, things can be deployed from there. And that you're going to get into trouble if you start trying to get around the curve in the porte cochere. We have to talk about the parking on the drive itself and look at equipment radii and the exit strategy. So I want to, I just wrote Ed again. I'd like to get both Ed and the chief there and do a quick walkthrough of our analysis of the occupancy and egress issues and the upgrades that we're proposing for the building itself, which a primary piece of which is fire suppression. So, a sprinkler system, which now covers only the basement, would cover the entire building. So in terms of life safety, that's the goal. In terms of saving the building, which is, we desperately would like to do, that's the rest of that firefighting strategy. We get two sides well covered from asphalt. It's the other part that we need to talk about. So that's the piece.
So that's important input, I think, to be clear to everybody that parking scheme would change if the fire chief said, this isn't going to work here for us. You'll have to have fewer spots, to have to rearrange it. That's your plan, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and the other part, if you can, it's not critical to this discussion, but in terms of the restoration, which, of course, the community is thrilled that the building is protected by efforts in the former owners. But I just wondered if there's any general timetable on when the entire structure could be considered fully usable and able to have any programming really of any sort.
Well, you're looking at William, who's a very patient man.
Yes.
And because we've been conveying, as we discover things that need to be done and things need to be repaired, it's been several years of bad news, but there is a wonderful prospect, which is the pergola that, was original to the site, is going to be restored. And that's really on the aqueduct side, which in many ways is more visible than the Broadway side that people race by. So that is forthcoming. We're in the process of bidding it to contractors, and we have the permit. Actually, we've received the permit for that. So we that will be happening soon. In addition to the repairs to the carriage house, which are again part of this necessary scope of work that we've had to, that they've had to bear with as we've discovered stuff. We got the asbestos out of under the terrace. So the next effort will be in the back of the building to start restoring the ability to use the outdoor spaces, including the pergola, the terrace, and the carriage house. And then we move to the major piece, which is restoring the exterior and the interior and making those upgrades that allow for safe occupancy, like primarily the fire suppression system, as well as electrical and HVAC and plumbing stuff.
So all that's many months or more than many
Years.
It's a couple of years away. Yeah. I mean, by the time we get to fully restoring, we need a lot of patience and there'll be a whole series of building permits that we'll be seeking from the village.
But in terms of using it for some purposes now, some things can happen. I mean, it can be used in some ways.
Oh, absolutely. No, the building is safe to enter and occupy. There's nothing dangerous. The conservatory area is off limits and it's taped and locked away. But for, kind of the kinds of occupancies that single family houses, kind of can also enjoy, it's available. And the carriage house is also available, especially when we fix the roof. But for the change of use that we're talking about, we need to undertake the program that we'll be discussing with Ed, which again involves a fire suppression system.
All right, well, I'll stop there for now. I mean, I might have some more comments later, but thank you, Steve,
Sure.
for filling us in.
Sure.
else the board want to, talk, I guess specifically, I mean, to me, the biggest thing here is obviously the change from, 25 to 50 to, 100, which is actually 112. And kind of people's thoughts and feelings on that and how that works.
Yeah, that's a big change. And first of all, I'd like to thank everybody involved with the Institute for being extremely responsive to the concerns that were brought up both by the board and by members of the community. And, Jennifer, as usual, you gave a very clear and concise laying out of very drilled down to really look at very specific ways you could make it more responsive to the community's concern. But I think we have to start from the fact that the initial event was by nobody planned it, that it was going to happen the way it did. Nobody anticipated a number of people who are going to attend, but it raised a huge red flag about what could happen unless the board keeps careful eye on this. And again, I appreciate the thought and the planning and the interaction with the board and the community that's gone into it so far. But I think we would be better advised to start smaller and open the door further as we go along, and to keep to the original 50 attendee plus the staff limit for being included as a matter of course, and have board approval for the larger seminars and such. I think that's, that feels to me responsive to the community concern. I don't feel it would be putting a tremendous burden on you to run that by the board. You can certainly have the smaller educational seminars. And if you have a few of the smaller ones first, that obviously will be very reassuring to the community if all goes well.
Thank you, Janice, for those comments. Thank you. One thing I would just mention is, obviously the event from over the summer occurred without any of these limitations in place, right? So there was no pre-registration. There was, there wasn't the type of oversight that will occur. Oh, sorry, I don't know why my camera is, it's like Halloween once again. I'm seeing a ghost there. None of the limitations that would be in the special permit were obviously in existence during the summer because we hadn't gone through this process. That was I think that was a learning experience for the owner to make sure that there are proper checks and balances in place. And the special permit with all of the limitations that we've been talking about, I think provide those those checks and balances and those limitations and restrictions to prevent something of that scale from happening again without the involvement, more involvement from the village to make sure that everything, every T is crossed and every I is dotted. So I would just mention that, we're talking about 112 versus the several hundred of attendees that attended the event over the summer. So it seems like a lot to go from 50 to 100, but when you're comparing it to the event over the summer, it will be just a small fraction of the amount of people that did attend the site.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say that there were a number of things, but the overarching comment I'm going to make is I feel like the board's been pretty strong in trying to indicate that smaller is better to begin with. But I feel that every time we get something back from the applicant, that it's actually pushing the boundaries. So for instance, on the latest form description, outline application, whatever you want to call it, certain things that we had talked about don't seem to really be reflected. I mean, going from the 50 plus 12 to the 100 plus 12 seems to be really flying in the face of all the comments we had been making as a board and that the residents had been making. Another indication of that is the time of operation was set at 10 p.m., but we had spoken specifically about weekdays being earlier than that and weekends being allowed to go to 10 p.m. So that's missing. We'd set an 8 p.m. as what appeared to be a reasonable cutoff point for weekday activity due to the residential neighborhood. Another element that came through was a statement that about in the parking plan, et cetera, that large buses would not be allowed to stop on Fargo or on Broadway. But I think we made it very clear that even minibuses, or what do you want to call them, like the rec van, the bigger that holds like 20 people, whatever, those we didn't want having stop on Broadway. We wanted those to discharge and load on the property. So there's things like that that are falling out of what you guys are bringing forward that makes it seem like you're not really listening to the board. And right now, I think from just an informal discussion of the board, I think I'll have to say it, I think that we're all on the kind of leaning toward making sure that we start small with reasonable restrictions and then build out after a year, after our experience of, and the community's experience about the events. So I listed 3 specific areas, but I'm sure there are other ones that sort of run off the course of what we had been discussing in terms of smaller is better.
Mark, thank you for that. I just want to touch on a couple of things. In the statement of use, and the thing that struck me the most, frankly, is the jitney van, and the loading and unloading on Broadway. We agree that there's to be no loading or unloading on Broadway. And we specifically put it's on page 1 of the statement of use, the 3rd bullet from the top, which talks about the fact that large buses can't load or unload passengers on Broadway or Fargo. They
right,
have
but a large bus is a large bus. I mean, you had like coaches on Broadway at the first event. So to my mind, a large bus is not a jitney. You know, a
right,
large bus is, yeah, so the language isn't right in the application. That's what I'm trying to say. It should be there'll be no unloading on Broadway or Fargo. That's what we discussed, not an exclusion just for, quote, large buses.
No, but the second sentence that I was going to mention is that it says that guests will be transported to the site by jitney, van, or other similar small scale vehicle, and loading and unloading will be on site to avoid any temporary parking on Broadway. So
right, but when you say large buses are not allowed to stop on Broadway, it's, you know, that it should just be, there will be no loading and unloading on Broadway or Fargo. There shouldn't be an exception or a conditionalization to say a certain type of vehicle won't, and then you go into more details about other activity. It should just be, there will be no unloading or loading on Broadway or Fargo, period.
Right.
No exception.
I think we're on the same page as far as the end result.
That's no, but the document says.
And I think we just need to make the language more clear, but it's not our intention at all to have any unloading or unloading of
so then
vehicles,
what about
no matter what size or kind, on Broadway or Fargo.
What about the 6 p.m. Or 8 p.m. weekday versus the 10 p.m.? You know, there's no mention of that in the current document.
So,
and-
yep, so the fifth bullet in that same section talks about what we had spoke about during the work session, that there will be no amplification of music or sound after 8 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then after 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday. And what we left open was what the time of day would be for the conclusion of if we have an evening program. So we talked about the fact that it's possible we may have a program beginning at 5 or 6 o'clock for folks that have, a 9-to-5 job. And what time of night would that program end? And that was something we talked about, a couple of different scenarios. And then ultimately that was an open item that you tasked us with coming back to you with a concluding time. And that time is 10 p.m., which we are proposing. And that is on page 3 of the statement of use under details, the second to last bullet there.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading in terms of see, I guess I'm confused about what this because it doesn't, well, maybe it's just that I was reading it too fast. I don't know. But where, it says under that summary, it says the latest concluding time of programs are 10 p.m. But again, specifically, weekends only. I mean, so the way this is written to me is just not clear, and is, it's not like what I would see as a plain language kind of document. Instead, there seems to be places where the document not disagrees, but allows loopholes between one section in one paragraph and another section. I would certainly, if I had been writing this, I would be very, editorially cautious not to ensure that all that differentiation was there, and not to sort of just globally say the end of activities is 10 o'clock, because again, makes it, I don't know, it seems to contradict what was said previously about weekday versus weekend.
Well, didn't
Right,
we
so
on
we had
on the weekday and weekend? I thought we were talking about outside.
Yep, so we were talking about that there would be no noise or amplification, there would be no amplification of noise or music after 8 p.m. during the week and after 10 p.m. on the weekends. And then we talked about that we would otherwise be subject to the existing Village of Irvington noise ordinance, which is pretty strict and precludes, I don't have language in front of me right now, but it basically precludes any noise that would constitute a nuisance to the neighbors. So in the event that there was any noise at any time of day from people gathering outside, even without any amplification of noise or music, if it creates a nuisance, that's something that a neighbor could, call the police and complain about, and the police would come out.
We want to
and
leave it
enforce
open like that for weekdays. We know there's going to be complaints. I mean, period. That's the way this village is. They complain about any kind of noise coming from a lot of places. So especially on school nights. So, and just the mere activity of loading and unloading people, but loading people and having jitneys coming and leaving, that's going to increase the noise factor no matter what you do in the evening after an event. So again, I feel like you're not really, it doesn't feel like you're really working with us and with the spirit of what the community has been feeding back to you. Rather, sounds like you're trying to, at least in my mind, you're trying to push the boundaries as far as you can get, and then kind of, argue details that are kind of suspect in and of themselves. I mean, that's just my reading of it. And right now, I'm not in, in case you can't tell, regardless of how much I like the idea of the operation of the Institute, I'm 100% against the current definition of what the special permit application that you've provided us, because I feel like it's gone so much in the wrong direction from what our feedback has been to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you feel that way. We tried very carefully to take almost verbatim what was what was said at that work session and plug it into our statement of use. And if there was something lost in translation,
Well,
that's
I think
unfortunate, and we apologize for that. But with respect to the noise limitations and the hours of the programming, we walked away from that work session with what we thought was a pretty clear understanding of what the board was looking for, and we tried to implement that in the statement of use. If we need to modify that further, we can
I
certainly
think you
talk
should simplify it. I think you should make the
ownership
statement
about
of
that.
use be very simple. It should be, here's what happens for normal educational events, and here's what happens for special events above the number, which we're saying is 50 plus 12, or which is what we agreed to originally, suggested. So there's a bifurcation there. And then within any of those things, there's a discussion about weekdays and weeknights, and weekends. And I think relying upon the Irvington Noise Ordinance to backstop what we're trying to achieve in the underlying special permit, I don't know that that is really going to make anyone comfortable. I think the special permit is going to have to be, as I said, you might stop amplification at 8 p.m., but there's going to be a lot of noise. And if there is, even at the end of the event, there's going to be an uptick of noise from the transportation requirements. So I just feel like I'm not comfortable with where this is going.
All right, it's a little frustrating because we specifically talked about relying on the noise ordinance at the work session, and now I'm hearing, at least from one member of the board, that that's not the direction that the board wants to go in. So I don't know if there's any other members of the board that recall that conversation.
If I may, I think that Jennifer and the applicants have tried to respond to the specific concerns that we brought up. This is not a perfect world. And the problem is that a lot of what we're doing here is working on speculation. If there's noise, how much noise is it going to be to break down stuff after the end of a program? We don't know. And to what that says, I appreciate the fact that you've attempted to address concerns brought up by the board and the community. Obviously, not all of us agree that it was done as fully as we might have liked. But the bottom line is, for me, the board needs to maintain review capability for programs larger than 50 in the beginning. If they all go perfectly fine, we don't need to keep that level of review. But given how it started, even with the revisions that you've proposed on behalf of your client, I certainly am not comfortable saying, sure, 100 people, what could possibly go wrong? A lot could go wrong. And the thing is, because we haven't done it yet, we can't anticipate it. It's a new site for you guys. This is new kinds of programming. It's, has a profound effect on the neighbors in the village. And I think we have to be careful in just keeping our I'm losing the metaphor here, but keeping our involvement through the approval process for any group larger than 50.
Let me chime in on one of the points that has come up, and that is the one related to 112 versus 50 and 12. That seems to be an obvious change, and you brought that out, Jennifer, and we all know that's a change from our earlier discussion. I appreciate the back and forth you had with the owner and the discussions about these very exciting pitch competitions and the judges. This sounds like a very, very worthy thing that the Institute is doing. I would oppose, however, changing for our use now, going from 62 to 112 for the first year. It doesn't negate that I personally think that isn't a great thing to have a lot of judges there and have the excitement of it and bring out a lot of the entrepreneurial skills that you're hoping to develop. But I guess, I'm not going to tell you how to do your programming, but if for the first year, several of those are held somewhere else, maybe the next year they're all held at Villa Lawaro because, there were no problems with the smaller ones. So on that specific point, I wouldn't approve that higher number. On the issues that Mark is bringing up, I'm very sensitive to the ending time at 10. And I realized that we did, I mean, in my memory, we did talk about relying on the noise issue, but I would love to see some greater concern about the comings and goings at 10 o'clock for the people that are the 62 people who might be there. That kind of noise, and if there are ways to propose to abate that noise of coming and going onto the little jitneys, they're not supposed to idle anyway in Westchester County. There are ways of requiring that you keep people inside, then they're not the 45 people standing out on the driveway waiting to get into the jitney. I mean, I've been to weddings like that. I mean, everybody's chatting, you're really excited, you're sharing ideas, but I would feel better on that regard if you could propose some mitigating ways for that end noise. It's not amplification noise. It's the coming and going of program people who are probably really excited about what they've seen and done, and they should be, and so too with the community members. But it seems like that could be mitigated by some kind of keeping people inside until the bus driver says, okay, 10 people can get on the jitney. But a commitment like that would go a long way, I think, in allaying some. If I were a neighbor, I would rather people were inside talking about how excited the program was than outside. I suppose in the middle of January, most people would want to stay inside, but so let me stop there. That's my main comment, is that 112 number. I couldn't approve that.
I had one question. In the new letter, it says, about when the request for up to 112, it says, we don't, typically it won't be that large, but, it could be, we want that optionality basically. What kind of, now, like for a pitch competition or for the, kind of your normal programming, what is kind of the average attendance that you expect?
So as I understand it, there's obviously a wide variety of programs that can be offered. As I mentioned earlier, some are very industry specific. So focusing only on a portion of, business topics that are relevant to retail, some for management, some for, et cetera. For those smaller programs, I'm told that the typical attendance is something more in the range of like 10 to 20 attendees, so much smaller than the maximum that we're talking about here. As the programs get broader in scope and apply to more segments of business, more general topics, obviously then the interest grows, and the interest can grow to attendees more than 50. For the pitch competitions, which the Institute has held and wants to continue to hold, I'm told that they typically hold those quarterly, so there would only be maximum of 4 per year, and that's when the attendance gets into that upper ranges of into the 90s and 100, because you have not only the attendees of the program, the registrants who are, the students, I guess we can call them, not only the students, but also the lecturers and the folks that are actually judging the competition. The folks that are judging the competition would typically come with a couple representatives of the company that they are affiliated with. So I hope that answers your question.
Jennifer,
William, I don't know if you
Jennifer,
have anything else to add. Oh, sorry, Mary
Yeah,
Ann.
let me ask you a related question, Jennifer. I assume on those pitch competitions, pretty far in advance when they're going to be held. It's not
I believe
something
so.
that
I would defer to William.
Yes.
To confirm.
Yeah, I would
Yes,
assume so. That being the case, at least to get started, it doesn't seem very burdensome to have to run it past the board and run your the details of transportation and how many people and the hours and everything before the board. I mean, I don't think the board has in mind that they're going to, vote these things down, say, no, you can't have it. I think what they want to do is make sure that it's held in such a way that it's not going to impose on the neighbors at all.
I
On
think
the
that's kind
neighbors
of where,
and the
I
traffic.
think that's kind of where I was getting is kind of, that could be a compromise is, anything up to the 50 regular attendees, it's just business as usual. Because
Yeah, and what-
everyone kind of says that's not going to be that, worrisome for the neighbors. But once you get to that 100 number, it's only, if it's a quarterly pitch competition or something, that's, you could do get the next one approved, 3 months in advance almost.
Yeah, but that's my point. It seems
Yeah.
like it's not going to be that burdensome to you because you know well in advance anyway about
And
it.
if you do the first one and you lay it out, and that could be the template, and then it's just easy, assuming it works, it becomes kind of an easy thing. And then I think that's what kind of Connie was saying too. The first year, that's the way it works. And then if everyone that's 100 works perfectly fine, then you don't have to do that anymore. I mean, kind of push it up or that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, oh, sorry, William, go ahead.
No, I was just wanted to follow up on the question that you had for me, is that the pitch competitions, they're not always going to be held at Villa Lawero. Traditionally, we've held the pitch competitions regionally. So we've held some on the West Coast, in the South, as well as the Northeast. So, and I also wanted to add that the pitch competitions are not the focal point of the Institute's programming. That's a very small part of it. Like Jennifer previously mentioned, that some of the programming will require attendance of more than 50 people by the sheer excitement of a topic. So it is essential to the programming itself.
And I think what we're saying is that that's great. Just let's start by saying if it's going to be over 50, the board needs to okay. And we need to be sure that all of these aspects of the plans are in place.
Yeah, we hear you. I think we're getting a consistent message across the board. And we hear that, and we will certainly discuss that with the owner.
We're not looking to say no, but we do feel it's our responsibility to be thoroughly informed about the plans in advance. And
Sure.
have an opportunity to pick out some details that we feel like, we see there might be a potential problem here. We want to work with you, but we do feel we need to keep that cap go at this point.
Absolutely. And I feel like we're trying to strike that balance between, making sure that you have the control over the process, right? To feel comfortable with it, but also providing, not having so many restrictions that it's going to impede the ability of the Institute to have its regular programs. So we're trying to find that that middle ground. And I appreciate the board's comments tonight, and we'll certainly discuss those with the owner.
I do have another one. Jennifer, we're under special events where you've got this, no public hearing shall be required. I mean, I would suggest striking that. I mean, the board can have whoever they want to. I mean, it's not going to be a public hearing, but these things will come up at public meetings and there'll be agenda items, and the public, the neighbors get to participate. So I don't like the idea of having in a special permit anything saying no public hearing should be required. I'm not sure why that was put in there.
So I completely understand, and we completely understand. It'll be on the board's public agenda. The board will take public comment, during its agenda process, as it typically does. The board obviously has discretion to allow public comment during the consideration of the request. I think the intent there was to not require all of the signage and the newspaper publication and the mailing of the public notices, which can become a burden if that's being done for each event that's over 50 attendees. And also that
Yeah, but
it
if
would
you're
be up
not
to the
asked,
discretion.
well, why do
And
you have to? Why do you
and
have
it's
to
not-
say that?
I think we just wanted to make sure that it was clear that this wasn't going to, it's not construed to be, we're asking for like a new special permit every time we're coming in for a request for an event over 50 people. I think it was just meant to be
Yeah,
a point of
well,
clarification, not anything that would be limiting to the board, but just a point of clarification. But we understand that the board obviously has the discretion to allow as much public comment as it chooses during its meetings.
Oh, I would agree with Mary Ann. I think you'd put a line through that and take out that phrase. I don't know if the other board members want to speak, but I did want to put another word in about the tours. I've been a very big advocate from day one, and I see Lilia Bundles is in attendance tonight. To make this a really good community, a project that speaks to the community here in Irvington, I think those tours are a very important part of that whole picture. It doesn't get as much attention either from you guys, Jennifer. There's not as much discussion about it, and we did work out quite a bit of the details. I would just say, I mean, I think the public would love to hear that this is something that it's not that you just have to physically do 2 a year or whatever it is to maintain your relationship with the National Trust. I forget the regulation, but that you're fully committed to helping the community understand the history of Madam Walker and her daughter and all the innovative things that happened there. And it's not just a, oh, ho, yeah, ho hum. If somebody asks us, we'll have a tour. So that's my personal campaign to draw attention to it. I don't even know that it means that you have to do anything different with your paperwork, but to me, it's incredibly important for a long-term good relationship with the village.
Yeah, absolutely.
I-
Oh, go ahead, William.
No, I would just like to say, I totally agree. I don't think there's been much discussion about that, strictly because we're all on board with that part of the process that we do want to make the mansion available to the public to come and visit and learn the history. Also, I would like to say that if Larry, if you could add Ms. Bundles, she can speak to that part as well. So we've had internal discussions about that. I can't tell you the number of requests that I get and that Ms. Bundles gets to have tours of the property. So that has been something that's been our focus. We're fully on board with that. Therefore, there hasn't been a lot of back and forth discussion.
Thank you, William. I love hearing that. And, you know, it's more than a tour like, okay, this is room 1, this is room 2. It's a lot more about, you know, people who understand the history, and obviously Ms. Bundles is one of them, and others who have written books about the history of the building. I think it could be a very important part, and I know you don't want to have one of your other regular educational programs at the same time you have a tour, and we don't
Exactly.
want tons of things going on in terms of the neighbors, but that's something where the neighbors may well be part of it. So it just seems to me I'd like to elevate it a little.
No, we're totally on board with that. Steve has also volunteered to conduct some of his tours, or I volunteered Steve to conduct some of the tours. And actually, Ms. Bundles and I spoke a couple of weeks ago about her being a part of some of the tours and even recording some videos that could be played as part of the tour itself. So Lilia, if you would like to speak about that, I would appreciate it.
You know, I'm so glad to be here. Connie, thank you very much for mentioning me. William,
I
Steve.
know you were going to be here.
You know, I'm always always trying to pay attention because I care so much about this. But absolutely, I have said, well, I'm just an Amtrak ride away.
Yeah.
And I can come at any time. I'm totally eager to talk with students, with the Historical Society. I have always appreciated how both the Irvington Historical Society and the Westchester Historical Society, as well as the Village of Irvington, has really embraced Madam Walker. So trust that I am available to talk and to anybody who wants to come, and as many times as I can come. Even I'm very good at those 3 to 5 minute conversations with people and talking about the things that I know about the house and the legacy and the village. And so, you can just really trust that I will be there to be supportive and also to be useful about the education. So I am there whenever I'm needed.
Well, I personally, again, this is me. I'm personally very happy to hear your enthusiasm on this. And I guess for people, the practical side is it's not part of the special permit, but people will want to know, well, who do I contact? Do I contact Steve Tilley or William James or Richelieu Dennis or you? I mean, it seems like we would want to have something in place that makes it easy for groups to know kind of a seamless process to do this, not for a discussion tonight, but
right.
That would make it easier for people to realize, oh yeah, they're into this, they want this. So
right,
thank
right.
you.
We need a partnership, I think, with the Historical Society and the Village and the Institute to say there's somebody who's actually on site or who's available to give this information, because people are just curious. Listen, I'm sure you get this, but at least once every other week, I get a request from somebody who wants to visit the house. And I have to say, the Village is like not really totally on board with people just showing up and driving buses up. We have to really respect that. But to be able to create some kind of way for people to learn about it, to feel a part of it, and at the same time respect the boundaries.
Exactly. Okay, now back to the hard stuff. Okay.
I think maybe we could get some comments from the public now. Maybe start with, I think, Sarah Parganos had her hand up first.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. So I'm one of the neighbors. I live on 90 Fargo. And I first want to start off by saying that what you guys are doing all sounds really exciting, and I fully support your mission. And and I want to start off by saying that. In the same breath, I also want to just give you guys a little bit more of sort of the neighbor human side of the concerns. I know that the board has expressed that on behalf of the neighbors. I don't think any of the board members are actual neighbors, although maybe you are. But so just to give you guys, some of my concerns about the 112 people are that, having the amplification end at 8 o'clock, 112 people talking is amplification to me. That's a lot of people making a lot of noise if they're all talking at the same time. So if you're going to stop at 10 o'clock on a weeknight, all the neighbors around you, just so you have a sense, most of them have children that are around 3, 4, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds. These are all kids that are going to bed at like 7:30 at night. So just imagine you have a 3, 4, and 5-year-old going to bed at 7:30 at night, and there are 112 people talking, mingling until 10 o'clock. And then 10 o'clock doesn't end at 10 o'clock. That it's not like everyone just poofs, vanishes, and magically ends up out of the villa. it's going to take at least 30 minutes for everyone to get out of there. So 10 o'clock really means 10:30 at minimum that it ends. So I just, I want to put that out there just to really, really be aware of the little children that are right around this property. So, I feel badly because I support your mission. However, we have children to think about. We have our children to think about. And I'm a little nervous about, just, we all bought our properties on this street, like without this as a potential issue. When I bought my house, like I didn't buy my house on a street with, a property that was going to be holding special events till 10:30 on weeknights and weekends. So, it just, I get your goal, but we also have our goal, which is our day-to-day lives with our children. So there's that. And then I know I'm running, I don't want to go on and on, but I think maybe I got to everything. So I guess I'm just sort of echoing what the board has said, just from the neighbor perspective, that I would really appreciate an 8 p.m. End point. Oh, and also I do agree with starting less and working up from there, because I will say it's a lot harder to give a privilege and then take it away. People don't like that. It's a lot easier to start lower and give more. And as a neighbor, my concern is if we start off with more, and it's a problem, it's going to be a lot harder to take that privilege away. And that's my concern and my fear. And so I know that the 400 people that showed up in July was not to be expected, but people took advantage, and like, that's sort of like, I feel like that's sort of the punishment. You now have to kind of like earn your keep, right? You kind of have to earn you have to earn it back, and you have to earn our trust is kind of my feeling. And I'll stop there. I won't drone. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Emily?
Don't hear. I'm not hearing anything.
You're on mute. She's on mute.
Not according to the picture, but.
Yeah, it is.
No.
If you look on
On
the
the bottom.
chat thing, it's a mute.
Okay.
Try Alt A.
Should we maybe go to Judd and then come back to Emily?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Judd.
She's muted too.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
We can. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Good.
I guess I just wanted to, just again, one thing that was said earlier, I think by Janice, just about, the profound effects on the neighbors in the village about what's being proposed. I mean, this is concerning to us. We're up, at night thinking about what's going to happen here. And as far as the carriage house location, yes, we were aware, in 2011 when the property was purchased, but that's given the fact that the home was residential, and it's changing now. I appreciate the efforts for screening. Screening helps with visual, stopping, the visual, but not noise. The noise is still gonna come through. I put a letter together. We put a letter together last month, and those concerns are still valid for us. And then other things in this submission, that just has us concerned about potential for overnight stays during the programming. As far as the amplification of music, is it inside? Is it outside? Using the carriage house as well, which is within the the aqueduct buffer, to host events there. So there's still a lot outstanding, from our concerns. And then last time I spoke about, kind of the slippage, and this is exactly what I could see happening, right? 50 going to, 50 going to 100, 100 going, to 175. And it's just, it's just concerning. But I trust that the village will do the right thing. I did speak to, a friend who, she's been in Irvington, I think her entire life. She's a real estate agent. And I just asked her, I said, what's the effect on the property value if this goes through? And she said to me, I can definitely tell you if this went through, it would limit the number of people interested in your home. Now, how does that affect the price? You can't put a dollar figure on it, but she said it would definitely limit the number of people interested. So again, and this is sort of what you lose sleep over when you think about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jet. Let's go with Jesse Clinton. Hey, Jesse.
Can you hear me?
We can. Yep. How are you?
Excellent. Doing well. How you doing?
Good.
All right. I want to just briefly, I wrote a letter, and I'm sure that everyone on the Villaruel team has taken time to read it, and appreciate you all doing the same. And I just really want to echo what's been said. I mean, we definitely, this is not what we envisioned when we bought our homes, all have children, thinking that we were coming into a residential neighborhood, even a school, like I understand, but the school hours are, 9 to 3, so it's just, the sleepover thing and really the sound really, it travels. I mean, I hear two guys on the aqueduct jogging wakes us up, if we have our windows open, which is crazy, which on one hand is crazy. On the other hand, it really speaks to how nice and quiet the neighborhood is, So, we're really concerned about this. And, I asked the board just to think about, is this something you'd want in your backyard? It's because that's kind of where we are. I mean, I think the cause is awesome. And I think, finding a good place for all this stuff would be terrific, and I would echo starting really, really slow and with really limited hours and show that we're going to be one community, one team on this thing, and that it works. Like 50, people, however many times a year, that to me is crazy. I think you start at, let's look, get the program going, use an alternate site, and let's do a couple events here. Let's see how they go and see how things work for the neighborhood as a team. I proposed already setting up a meeting with a few of us that, we could hammer out some details on that we all could agree to, because we do support the cause. That was one of the proposals I made. And other than that, I think people sleep, having people that don't, I can't think of many times I had people sleep over my house other than holidays or something like that, every now and again, but just seems out of the scope. So anyway, I've mentioned all this stuff in my letter. I just want to continue to request that the board looks at it as it's, your backyard that'd be happening in. So with that, appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks, Jesse. No other hands are up. We did have one question from the Rancics, and I guess this is for Jennifer. Since we're very concerned about outdoor use, I would like to ask if the applicant could refer to my letter and address the questions on page 3 in writing so that we understand the scope of the application. I believe the applicant already responded to questions 1 and 2, but there are other questions that should be responded to. These questions are applicable to the other proposed uses. Thanks, Jay Rancic. So I don't know if you have that letter in front of you, Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up
Okay.
here.
Great.
Sorry for that. The downfall for working solely on the computer instead of having my paper file in front of me as I'm used to having.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being very environmentally friendly, but then I can't find it. So
Exactly. I like to work old school with hard copies of papers and files. All right, so I found the letter. I'm looking at page 3. Okay, yeah, page 3 has a whole host of, it looks like 9 questions, and I'm assuming that's what the member of the public is looking for a response on. It sounded like they wanted a written response. We're happy to provide a written response. Or I can kind of run through the questions now if it's at the pleasure of the Board of Trustees.
I'd be happy to have you, kind of go through them now if you're prepared.
Sure, okay. Okay, so number 1 says, let's see, will seminars, workshops, and meetings, in addition to pitch competitions, be held outdoors? So, and William, please jump in if I'm misstating anything. I'm going to speak just from my understanding based on all the conversations that I've had with my client. But my understanding is that seminars, workshops, and meetings, they will be held indoors primarily. There is the potential that there will be a reception after a program, a networking reception where the back patio may be used on a nice day. For a wine and cheese event, something similar to that, to have a bite to eat. But the actual programming, it would be held indoors. Is that correct, James? I'm sorry.
Yes, that's
James.
No, it's quite all right. The curse of having 2 first names is quite all right. Yes, I would say 90% of the events and seminars will be held indoors. And like you said, there may be a reception, most of which will be indoors as well, but we will utilize the outdoor terrace space at times. And I know it's been a great deal of focus on the amplification of noise and sound in music, but I would like to say that not all seminars or receptions will require that we have music, a band, to go along with it, nor will there be a reception after each seminar that we have. That is just something that we may have as an option after a particular seminar.
Thank you. The second question is, how many pitch competitions with up to 100 participants per year are anticipated? I think we addressed that earlier. Typically, the Institute holds them quarterly. However, they're held regionally, so not all 4 of them would necessarily be held at Villa Lewaro.
Correct.
Number 3, it is unclear whether the pitch competitions will be 1 day, 3 days, or longer. So with all of the Institute's programming, we're in the statement of use, we said it would be up to 3 days. Most of the programs would be 1 day or a part of a day. And it's, we may have 3-day programs if it's a, larger audience, but 3 days would be the maximum.
And pitch competition.
Clarifying the pitch competition itself is just a part of a day.
Okay. No, the pitch competitions typically can be 2 days. They'll have a day of the actual pitch portion of the event, after which the judges in a smaller group will make decisions on winners and allotment of funding. And that will often occur on the second day. Occasionally, they can all be done in 1 day.
Thank you for clarifying that, William. All right, number 4, is the applicant going to have a DJ and or band during these seminars, workshops, meetings, and pitch competitions? I think we just addressed that in connection with the answer to number 1. Let's see, number 5 is, how are the referenced pitch competitions moderated / encouraged? William, do you want to speak a little bit about how the pitch competitions are how they typically run?
Well, I mean, it's really, the company will get up and give a presentation of their particular product, sales that they have, demographics that they sell to, and give an overall sort of picture of their business, and each company will do that. And from there, judges will review together and make a decision in terms of winners, definitely not losers, but winners, and how they are ranked and what they will get in terms of funding. But again, it seems like the focus has turned to pitch competitions. And I know pitch competitions, due to Shark Tank and a number of other shows that's kind of popped up in the last year, is the exciting portion that everyone wants to talk about. That is a very, very small part of the Institute's mission. It is really a byproduct of providing education and opportunity to people. And you can't award money or grants or additional opportunity without the education first. So the focus is on the education itself, not the pitch competition. The pitch competition is a very, very small part.
Thank you, William. Continuing on the theme, number 6 is the assembly for the pitch competitions for up to 100 participants and unknown number of moderators held indoors or outdoors. I think we addressed that it would, this is something that would happen indoors, as with the rest of the programming. The unknown number of moderators, I mean, I think it depends on the size of the pitch competition. Certainly that the number of moderators would be known at the time the pitch competition is being organized, and we would fall within the confines of the special permit limitations.
Correct. Correct. That's correct. Typically, there are 1 or 2 moderators and usually 3 to 4 judges.
Thank you. Number 7, if these seminars, workshops, meetings, and pitch competitions for up to 100 attendees are being held outdoors, will they be sheltered by tents or other outdoor enclosure? Well, the intent is to have them indoors.
The intent is to hold most of the programming indoors.
Right.
Now, there may be an opportunity in the spring and the summer of lovely days, just like the rest of the residents who would like to utilize their outdoor. We would request that we have the opportunity to do the same.
Number 8, will alcohol be served during these seminars, workshops, meetings, pitch competitions, and evening dinners? If yes, did the applicant apply for a liquor license? If alcohol is served during any of those events, we will comply with whatever licensing requirements would apply to that particular program or event. Have we applied for a liquor license at this time? I think, William, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the answer is no, because we don't even have a special permit in place at this time. Number 9, are attendees charged any fees? Are overnight guests charged any fees? If yes, how much? These fees are relevant to the tax assessor to properly assess the extent of the applicant's real estate tax exemption. While the Institute represented, no documentary evidence submitted that it is a 501c3 nonprofit. There is no evidence submitted regarding the owner, Villa Lewaro LLC, a Delaware LLC. Once the programming is up and running, we'll figure out. I'm sure that the Institute will determine whether fees are charged. William, I don't know if there's under the Institute's current programming, if there's a fee structure in place. But certainly we're going to live within the confines of the 501c3 requirements. And I don't think we have anything much more to say beyond that at this time.
Correct.
I'll just say that we don't charge any fees for attendance, whether it's for anything. We don't charge any fees. And the owner of the Institute is affiliated with the nonprofit. It is itself a nonprofit LLC, which is why we have real estate tax exemption. All of that can be found readily online, but we can also provide it if you would like.
Okay, and that concludes the questions that were listed on page 3 of the neighbor's letter.
Great. Sue Robinson has her hand up. Hey, Sue.
Yep, I'm here. Good evening. I'm Sue Robbins, and I live right across the street from Villa Lawaro. Matter of fact, I could probably play Frisbee with you during the summer. I just wanted to say welcome to Irvington, and I wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time and the energy to put Villa Lawaro back together. It's a treasure, and I'm very glad and I'm very grateful for everything that you're doing. I'm also very glad to be seeing people in the house. The house has been empty too long, and I want to thank you for that. And I also want to thank you for your mission, because you're providing a hope and a future for so many people. So thank you. Thank you very much for everything you do. I definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think that's it for hands being raised. We're obviously keeping the public hearing open until the next meeting in November, which is the 15th, I believe, Larry, is that right? So the public hearing will be open. Continue to send letters, and we obviously have an opportunity to speak again on the 15th. But I'd like to thank the applicant. Sorry, go ahead, Connie.
No, finish your line, Brian. I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to thank the applicant for having their whole team here tonight, and for the residents that came to speak up on their own behalf. So
Yes, I would reiterate all that you just said. I just wondered if, in terms of our board, if the message about the numbers, the 50 or the 62 versus 112, I mean, just, looking around the board's responses, it seems like that is something that seems to need to come off the table. But maybe there's more that the board wants to say about that, just so that there's no confusion about where that might go.
I will say that we heard the message loud and clear.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's anything, if any of the board members want to add anything else, that, we're happy to listen, but we heard the message loud and clear from all 5 of the board members. We can't make any commitments here tonight. We do need to go back and speak to the owner. But we'll submit prior to the next meeting with any changes in our proposal.
Just one other comment at the end here. One of the speakers said, you have to win our trust. And that really, I heard that. And I think that, we are spending a lot of time with hypotheticals. Well, if this and then that, and if it rains and the buses get broke, whatever. We're not going to know until there is an event. And I think, again, from the board's point of view, we're listening very carefully to the community. We're listening to you. We want to just establish reasonable parameters to get started, so that we're not just saying, fine, great, whatever you guys want to do. We can't do that. So you've put a lot of time into this. We're listening to you. We're listening to the residents, but we're trying to get to a point where we can, in conscience, say we can totally support this without additional hearings, but we keep hold of the reins until we see how it works.
Thank you, Janice. Yep, understood.
And, it's not a complete list, but I mean, I still think the issues about the end of the evening noise is a concern. I think that the issues about some of the way the language is in the proposal is of concern, because there are sections that appear to be contradictory to one another. So I think that kind of thing would certainly, I'm not a legal mind like Mary Ann, so she is used to reading through documents and being able to pull out what apparent contradictions that aren't really contradictions. But I think for everyone else involved, the language has to be a lot clearer and less opaque in certain areas. And, one example, large buses, right? So anyways, Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everything we talked about tonight gets put into the hopper to be dealt with, not just the issue of the baseline count for the initial special permit.
Yeah, and I would say the neighbor who mentioned the ending time and the children in the neighborhood certainly means a lot to I think the board members here, but I would want to clarify when, even if the end time is 10, seems to me that's not the end of the programming, that's the end and everybody's gone by 10. So you're on the bus and you're out of there. Now, whether or not this board wants to say that has to be 8 and not 10 or some other time, I don't know, but when I read that 10, I read it as people are gone. It's not the end of the program. So, and one other point, I'm sorry, I keep thinking of things. The carriage house and the noise issue, as the neighbors brought up, that the screening with is important, but I think the noise issue of the carriage house so very, very close. I walk on the aqueduct. I saw that. I see the amount of space. I see the neighbor's yard. But I wonder what might be done even inside the carriage house to abate possible noise that's inside there. Obviously, you're not going to allow people to smoke behind there. You're not going to let people throw bottles back there. I mean, that's obviously something that, it wouldn't be permitted for any neighbor. But I wonder about the closeness of the noise and whether you have the capacity to further abate carriage house noise.
We will certainly consider that.
Okay, well, thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. And
All right.
see you in 2
Thank
weeks.
you for your time.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have volunteer appointments. First one is resolve to appoint Lori Davidowitz as a member of the planning board with the term to expire December 2025, and further resolve to appoint Charlotte Binns as a member of the Irvington Woods Committee with the term to expire December of 2021. So I guess she'll be getting reappointed next month, but I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is a temporary waiver of the building department fees for certain heat pump HVAC systems. Do you want to give us a little, I think it's pretty obvious what it is, Larry, but.
Yeah, well, we've talked about the Energy Smart Homes effort to try to encourage energy efficient equipment to be installed in place of inefficient equipment. And so part of that is to further incentivize by eliminating the fees on the building department level for those types of applications. So that's the suggestion here. And I think the other communities that are involved in this are also planning on a similar waiver.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Is this assuming that there's a specific list of approved equipment or an approved installation firm?
Well, everything has to meet the New York stretch code anyway, so that's assumed anyway. So it's not necessary to pre-qualify that, or separately qualify that. So it will be energy efficient.
Okay. Whereas the Village of Irvington is collaborating with Sustainable Westchester and the villages of Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow to promote the adoption of efficient electric heat pumps, and whereas the adoption will be enhanced by reducing the costs associated with such upgrades, now therefore be it resolved to waive all village building department fees associated with upgrades of existing home heating and cooling systems from fossil fuel-based technology to efficient electric heat pump systems, and further resolve that this waiver is effective immediately and shall continue through May 31st, 2022. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next up is award of contract 2110 for plumbing for Village of Irvington projects.
So this is one additional trade that we had not awarded at this point. So we've done a few other trades up to this point. Plumbing was still hanging out there. We had to rebid this. There was a little bit of a close call on the previous bid. So we clarified a few things and put it back out to bid. So the bids came in as you see here. We've checked references. This is where we're at. Joe Lombardo, Plumbing and Heating.
Okay. Whereas 3 bids are received for contract 2110 for plumbing for Village of Irvington project as follows: Joe Lombardo, Plumbing and Heating of Rockland, Inc., $15,450. Greenfield Plumbing and Heating, $22,659. And Rooter Plus Inc., $22,844. Whereas the village administrator has determined that the proposal from Joe Lombardo Plumbing and Heating of Rockland, Inc. is in order in response to the specifications. Now, therefore, be it resolved to award contract 2021-10 for plumbing to Joe Lombardo Plumbing and Heating of Rockland, Inc. at the prices submitted in their bid, and authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. I'll make a motion if I could have a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Reports of board, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Mark.
Nothing too much at this point, but just a comment that periodically I like to mention that some of the boards or committees are looking for people interested in working with them. In particular, the Tree Commission is always looking for some folks to get involved in that process. And I don't know where we stand on alternates for the planning board, Larry. Are we in a good number now, or are we looking for people for that?
No, I think we're still looking now, especially, I believe you only have one alternate left. So you still have 2 openings now with the appointment of Lori Davidowitz as a regular member.
Okay, anyways, that's it. Just to remind people that the ability for civic service is still available.
All right. Larry Lucky.
Just to add to the Brian's description of the Halloween parade, there were 1,200 goodie bags given out by the Irvington Fire Company. And again, a great job by Maureen DePauli and her crew. Peter Ole Turkey Trot is scheduled for Sunday, November 21st at 2 p.m. November 2nd, tomorrow, is when registration starts. Bathrooms in all parks will remain open, weather permitting, until around December 1st. The Irvington Woods Committee has set up opportunities for volunteers to help to rid the woods with a program called Invasive Removal Cleanup in the Irvington Woods Park. First work day is this Saturday, November 6th. 2 sessions available, 10 a.m. to noon to 2 p.m. Please register online. You can also contact CJ Riley with questions. The Irvington Woods Committee also has created a subcommittee of its members to look into the issue of deer population and its impact on the Irvington Woods Park. If you're interested in sponsoring a bench in Matheson Park, please contact Laura Copeman. Bench sponsorships are $2,000 or $2,500 for a bench with a brass plaque installed below the bench. There are new trees in Matheson, and there are plaques available and sponsorship for them at $1,700. The annual Thanksgiving Day delivery of meals to seniors and those in need is scheduled again on Thanksgiving morning, which is Thursday, December 25th. If you'd like to help, please contact Joe or Laura. That's it.
Janice?
Yes, for the fire department, the new chief's car will be outfitted soon. Unfortunately, the parts were delayed because of supply chain issues. But most importantly, the fire department was very pleased to co-sponsor the Halloween parade, which, as we have previously discussed, was an incredible success. For the schools, the district has scheduled, they're pleased to announce that they've scheduled a belated homecoming celebration this Friday. Parade will kick off from the Main Street School at 5, and the annual homecoming football game will take place at 6 under the lights at Mazzaro's Field. Come out and show your Bulldog pride and look at the amazing new facilities that the community supported through the most recent capital bond project. And those would, among the things that have recently opened are the Campus Learning Pavilion, which include the grandstand press box and outdoor restrooms, which were well used. The district is facilitating weekly COVID-19 surveillance testing. Thus far, approximately 900 students and staff have been tested, with 100% of the test results negative. And Dr. Harrison will publish the test results on the district website Facebook page. District's annual goals were presented and discussed at the October 26th meeting. To review the goals and learn more about priorities, feel free to view the meeting or presentation materials, which are all linked from board docs that can be accessed through the district website. At the November 23rd meeting, the administration will present its annual student performance report, and we'll have a presentation from the Historical Society's Commemorate Committee on the proposed installation of art at Main Street School to honor enslaved Africans. Public comment on the installation is welcome and appreciated. And finally, the district has launched a Twitter page. Its Twitter handle is @IrvingtonUFSD. And be sure to follow the district on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Great. And Connie.
Yeah, I'm out of order tonight.
Yeah, I know. I blame
Keeping
Zoom.
us on our toes.
Exactly.
That's okay. Well, I really don't have any specific report except to say that, in my capacity as concern for the downtown development of business and enthusiasm and vibe and excitement, I think whatever we did on Halloween by a combination of restaurants that people were, they were lining up for, the kind of excitement that our community can produce is obviously good for local businesses too. So at least in the businesses that were appropriate to evening folks. So although I can't find a very active chamber, I think it would be great to have a closer relationship with all the businesses, but it seems we're doing okay anyway. And that's my report.
Very good. Village Administrator's report.
You're on mute, Larry.
Hold on, I got it. Terrible. I just wanted to report that there were 2 contracts that were awarded, that I awarded recently for the Dow's Lane culvert reconstruction and the Harriman Road storm damage restoration. Both of those contracts were awarded to Bradhurst Site Construction. We did bidding over a fairly short period of time, but we did publicly bid them over a 2-week period. The contractor is anxious to get started, hopefully sometime this week, if the contracts can get signed. The total of the contracts is just under $500,000, $470,880. We expect a portion of those contracts to be covered by FEMA. We don't know how much the portion will be. As soon as we start meeting with FEMA, we'll have a better idea. But these are contracts that were awarded on an emergency basis as a result of the flooding damage from the remnants of Hurricane Ida. The board, if you remember back in September, you gave me the authority to award these types of contracts on an emergency basis. But I want to report back just for good measure here, so you're aware of what's going on. That's it.
Village Clerk Treasurer's report.
All's good, nothing to report.
Village Attorney's report.
Nothing to report.
Public comment. Did anybody have any action items? I did not. So I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session regarding collective bargaining and a real estate matter, if I can have a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, carries. See you in the executive session.
Thank you all.